Hello, good evening and welcome to special coverage this evening from the historic city of Cambridge, where in just half an hour's time 7 political parties are going to be taking part in a head-to-head debate. We will be live in the spin room at the Cambridge Union and we are counting down to the start of the BBC election debate 2017 on a glorious sunny evening there in Cambridge. And the historic setting of the Senate House at the University of Cambridge is the venue for this special event. It's a 90-minute, 7-way debate. And here on the BBC News Channel, we'll bring you every moment, including all the reaction from the spin room afterwards. Inside the venue, the stage is set. After what has been several days of preparation, the neoclassical hall, normally used for graduation ceremonies, that will be hosting a mixture of party leaders and senior politicians from the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, the SNP, UKIP, Plaid Cymru and the Greens. Well, adding particular interest to the debate tonight is Jeremy Corbyn's last-minute decision to take part. It was unexpected. He made the call apparently at lunchtime, deciding that he would take part in the debate and challenging Theresa May to join him. But the Prime Minister, who's been visiting the West Country today, she said she preferred to be meeting voters on the campaign trail and she would stick to her guns. She would not, she said, take part in that Cambridge debate this evening. Well, the audience are going to be taking their seats in just a minute, ready to ask their questions and to weigh up the answers. Some of the party leaders arriving there. Caroline Lucas there from the Greens. We just saw Leanne Wood from Plaid Cymru as well. And I think this is live pictures now of the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. A lot of applause there as the Labour leader arrives in Cambridge and waves to quite a large crowd of supporters clutching Labour banners on a sunny evening in Cambridge. And this decision from Jeremy Corbyn, very interesting. He had said he wouldn't take part in the debate if Theresa May wasn't taking part, but a change of mind alongside his communications chief Seamus Milne there, walking towards the spectacular, sumptuous venue for this 2017 election debate. So Jeremy Corbyn, against all the expectations, a very last-minute decision that he would take part after all, and throwing down the gauntlet as he did so to Theresa May, demanding that she change her mind as well and also take part in the debate. But she is insisting that she won't. She'd rather be out and about on the stump meeting voters, she says. So there we are. Jeremy Corbyn is there in Cambridge. The debate itself underway in about 25 minutes' time. Well, with just over a week to go until polling day itself, senior figures from the 7 main parties taking part in that TV debate. And the BBC's Michelle Hussein is going to be moderating it. And as we've been saying, in that last-minute change to proceedings, Jeremy Corbyn revealing that he is going to be attending. We've seen him there arriving in person, but as we mentioned, Theresa May declining Mr Corbyn's challenge to attend, saying she's busy, out and about meeting voters and also working on Brexit negotiations. So Jeremy Corbyn's been on the campaign trail today and speaking to voters before he arrived just a couple of minutes ago in Cambridge. He said that a Labour government would make a more cohesive society and he urged the Prime Minister to take part in the Cambridge debate.
What kind of society do you want to live in? Are you comfortable that every night there are thousands of people sleeping on our streets and begging around the railway stations? Are you comfortable that there is such grotesque levels of inequality in our society and getting worse? Or do you want to elect a government that will do something different with the support of the people, which will develop the health, the housing, the education, and will provide opportunities for all across the spectrum, so that we have a more cohesive and coherent society in the future. And for all the cynical commentators, do you know what's happening is, everywhere I go, all over the country, the rallies get bigger, the crowds get bigger, the enthusiasm gets bigger, the determination gets bigger. And that gives us a chance to do something very, very special on June the 8th. And it's very odd that you have an election campaign where we go out and talk to people all the time, and the Prime Minister seems to have difficulty in meeting anyone or having a debate. And so there is a debate in Cambridge tonight. I don't know what she's doing this evening, but it's not far from London. I invite her to go to Cambridge and debate her policies, debate her record, debate their plans, debate their... and let the public make up their mind.
So that was Jeremy Corbyn a little earlier in the day throwing down the gauntlet to Theresa May. We've actually just seen Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary, arriving in Cambridge, who is representing the Conservative Party in Theresa May's place, because the Prime Minister is not taking part in the debate. She's actually defended her stance not to be part of the general election debate. She said she's been taking questions, quote, up and down the country instead. Well, our political editor Laura Kuenssberg's been speaking to the Prime Minister today and pushed her more on why Theresa May was not taking part in the debate.
No, what I've done in terms of our manifesto is been open with the British people about the great challenges that we face as a country over the next few years and beyond, and how we will address those challenges. And you talk about the Brexit negotiations. I've set out very clearly what our 12 objectives are for those Brexit negotiations. I believe that's the right thing to do. But as we go into those negotiations, which start just 11 days after Election Day, the question that people must ask themselves on Election Day is, who do they want to see fighting for Britain in those negotiations? Who do they want to see taking this country forward, building a more prosperous Britain for the future?
The questions that people also have is about the practical things that you would actually do if you're re-elected. So, can you tell us now, how would the immigration system work after Brexit? Who will lose their winter fuel allowance? Where will you set the social care cap? Because if you don't, there is this sense you're using these slogans again and again. You're talking about your broad principles, but you're trying to hide behind that. You won't tell people what you'd actually do.
No, we've been very clear. Let's look at the issue like the winter fuel payments and the issue around social care. What we've been very clear with people about and open with people about is that, yes, we do face the pressures of an ageing society. In just 10 years' time, there'll be 2 million more people aged over 75 in this country. And if we don't do something about our social care system, the system will simply collapse. So what we're proposing is a system where people can protect more savings to pass on to their children, where they won't have to sell their home in their lifetime to pay for their care bills, so that worry will be taken away from them, and there will be a cap on the absolute level of that funding that they have to pay.
Prime Minister, is if you keep repeating broad principles but don't give the detail, people will worry, for example, that millions of people might lose their winter fuel allowance, or the cap on social care might be set at an extremely high level. Don't people want more from you? Because you're basically saying, on many of these big issues, I'll get back to you.
What I'm saying is I will listen to you. And I think that's important. You can approach this in one of two ways. I've set out the broad principles of our policy. I've shown how we will provide a sustainable, long-term sustainable social care system for this country, which we need because the system will collapse unless we do something, and do it now. But what I'm also saying to people is I want to listen to them about where that cap should be, about where we should means test winter fuel payments. Listen to voters, listen to organisations, charities and others working with older people. Consult with them. I think that's the open thing for a government to do.
Well, that was the Prime Minister speaking to our political editor Laura Kuenssberg a little bit earlier on, amongst other things explaining why she is not wanting to take part in the Cambridge TV debate this evening. But in her place is the Home Secretary Amber Rudd, who arrived just a few minutes ago. There she is, stepping out of the car. A few boos, actually, it has to be said, from what looks like a crowd of Labour supporters who certainly gave Jeremy Corbyn quite a warm welcome when he arrived just before Amber Rudd. We've also just seen Tim Farron, the Liberal Democrat leader, arriving there for the debate. And we saw Leanne Wood from Plaid Cymru and also Caroline Lucas from the Greens. So they're all there in place. But as we were hearing, the Prime Minister herself is not there because she says she'd rather be out and about meeting voters. Well, let's go live to Cambridge now, and we can join my colleague Clive Myrie, who is there in the spin room, where it will all be poured over and digested a little bit later on. Clive.
It will indeed. It's beginning to fill up now. I've been here for the last, 2-3 hours, pretty empty to begin with. But now the journalists, the pundits, the analysts, the bloggers, they're all in here. And your sort of understanding of really what happens this evening at the debate on the front pages of the newspapers tomorrow, on the radio, television, a lot of that will be framed in this very room, and also some of the politicians from the 7 parties that are taking place tonight, that are taking part in the debate tonight. They're also in here trying to influence some of the copy that the journalists file. So it's going to be a very, very interesting place to observe the debate from here in the Cambridge Union building, just down the road actually from Senate House. With me is our political correspondent, chief political correspondent Vicky Young, to digest a lot of this. Vicky, first of all, Theresa May's decision not to turn up here, how much of a problem could that be, or is it a sensible thing, do you think?
Well, I think if you go back to when this election was called, she was very much seen as being the front runner going into this. You know, the polls suggested that she was ahead and she had everything to lose, and that is partly what is at the bottom of that kind of decision. It's why come here and be attacked on all sides. But Jeremy Corbyn's decision, obviously, to join in at the last minute has changed that slightly. Now, the difference with last time round, you remember David Cameron chose not to take part in one of these debates 2 years ago during the general election. The difference then was that there was no Conservative representative, so it was a slightly strange debate because everyone ganged up on Ed Miliband pretty much. Now, that won't happen this time because Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary, will be there trying to defend the government's record. So that will make it slightly easier for Jeremy Corbyn. And I think his people think he's had a good campaign, and that the more he's gone out there, the more relaxed he has been. You know, he's had some hiccups where he forgot the numbers, of course, for his childcare policy. But generally, he has looked more at home in these TV debates, maybe than Theresa May has. So we'll have to see how he performs tonight. But I think because we've got every party represented, it will be, for that, I think, a better debate.
Right, OK. It is actually probably one of the biggest debates we're going to have through the election campaign. What about the smaller parties, Plaid Cymru, the Greens and so on? How important is it for them, given the national stage that they will have tonight, how important is it for them to put on a good show?
Yeah, it is, and I think we saw that, didn't we, last time round? You know, Leanne Wood from Plaid Cymru, who won't have been known to a wider UK audience. You know, people really liked her when she went on the platform, and people heard from her for the first time. So it is important to them because, you know, they know that they can't be Prime Minister, but it's important for them to get that stage, you know, prime time, TV time, to get their case across. And I'm trying to think, I think Leanne Wood is the only surviving person from last 2 years ago. If you think about the lineup, it has completely changed, which shows you what's happened to British politics in that time. Tim Farron hasn't done one of these before in this way. You know, I think for the Liberal Democrats as well, you know, lots of people before this election talking about a resurgence for the Liberal Democrats. I've been in the West Country today with the Prime Minister. You know, the Tories don't think there is much sign of the Lib Dems coming back there, which would be very important to them holding on to the seats that they won last time round. This is a chance for Tim Farron, who, again, isn't that well known to people because they lost so many MPs last time round. They haven't had much coverage. It's a chance for him to get his message across, and we know he's going to talk very much about Brexit and about fighting that referendum result. So those kind of issues, of course, on Brexit is going to be, you know, one of the big things that will be debated tonight.
Of course, I mean, we saw how well Nick Clegg did back in 2010, and how this kind of national setting can give someone from a smaller party a bit of a lift.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for Paul Nuttall as well, you know, UKIP have not been having a particularly successful election campaign. Lots of polling evidence, but also the local election results seem to show that they were pretty much in free fall. They're not standing in, you know, lots and lots of seats that they stood in last time round. This is his chance to get out and really come out from under Nigel Farage's shadow. I mean, it's been a big problem for him that Nigel Farage was such a big figure. He hasn't really managed to break out and make his name. So, you know, for him too, that's going to be pretty important. But I think now that, you know, Jeremy Corbyn coming at the last minute, all eyes will be on him and whether he can, perform tonight and get that message across to a wider audience.
Indeed. Okay, Vicky Young, many thanks for that. Just 15 minutes to go before the all-important debate begins. I think we've got some pictures which we can show you. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we've got some pictures we can show you of the set being put together for this 7-way debate. Remember, the election was called some weeks ago. Jeremy Corbyn only decided today that he was going to turn up. It had been suggested that the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Emily Thornberry, was actually going to be in his place, but Jeremy Corbyn has decided to turn up. We'll bring you the debate in full, of course, at 7:30. We're going to have extra screen graphics, by the way, as well, here on BBC News. And we're also going to have our BBC Reality Check team actually looking at the debate and blogging live, putting graphics up on the screen live so you can keep a sense of exactly what is going on. I'm pleased to say now that Karen Bradley, the Culture Secretary, is with me. It's good to see you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. First of all, I think the only place we can start really with the Conservatives is the absence of Theresa May. Does that make sense to you?
Well, Theresa May set out her plan for how she was going to run this election and work in this election, getting up and down the country, meeting voters, and she's been clear about that plan. She's done it. She's travelled thousands of miles. She's attended over 60 events. She is the person who has taken questions from more members of the public and more questions from the press than Jeremy Corbyn. And it's interesting that it's taken Jeremy Corbyn 6 weeks to decide to come today to do this debate. But what it means is that the public are going to see for the first time what a coalition of chaos actually looks like when we see Jeremy Corbyn up on stage with those people who are going to be propping him up if there's a hung parliament. And, in 8 days' time, this is the reality of what a government could look like going into those Brexit negotiations. In fact, I think the only people missing are Diane Abbott and John McDonnell. The
implication is, to a lot of people, that Theresa May is not willing to defend not only her record, but her manifesto in public with Jeremy Corbyn.
That's simply not the case. She was on air 2 days ago. She'll be on TV again in 2 days' time. And she has been up and down the country answering those questions from the members of the public, more than twice the number of questions that Jeremy Corbyn's taken. He's been in Momentum organised rallies with Momentum supporters. She's been with ordinary working voters, getting up and down the country. But I go back to the point, it's taken him 6 weeks to decide to come to this debate tonight. And in 11 days after the general election, we're going to be going into the Brexit negotiations. Do we want somebody leading the Brexit negotiations who takes 6 weeks to make up his mind whether or not he's going to come to a debate?
How jittery are people within the Conservative Party? The polls have changed quite a lot over the last few days, and there's a sense that perhaps the party's losing traction.
Look, we've always been clear that going into the country, asking the country it's a general election, there's nothing guaranteed. And we've also been clear that polls get things wrong. They got the general election wrong in 2015, they got the American election wrong, they got the Brexit referendum result wrong, and Jeremy Corbyn was a 200-to-1 outsider and he became Labour leader. So no one has ever relied on the polls. And I think what it brings home, though, is the stark reality. The Conservatives lose 6 seats, and the coalition of chaos that you see tonight squabbling on stage are the people who are going to be leading the Brexit negotiations with Jeremy Corbyn at the helm.
All right, Karen Bradley, Culture Secretary, thanks very much indeed for joining us. As I say, this room is filling up with journalists and pundits. They're going to be putting their particular gloss on the debate, which begins in, just 10 minutes' time. I should tell you that we will have a chat with some of our other guests here. Brian Paddick can join me now from the Liberal Democrats. Brian, it's good to see you. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. Just tell us how important tonight is for the Liberal Democrats and Tim Farron.
Well, a lot of people will not have seen Tim Farron before, and what they're going to see is a genuine guy who's passionate about these issues because he's not from a privileged background. So, he is going to stand up to the Conservatives' dementia tax, to the cuts in school budgets, and the NHS.
But the fact is, you're starting from a very low base. You've got a handful of MPs. Do you believe that you can turn this situation around?
Well, the polls are all over the place. Overnight we had one poll showing it's going to be a hung parliament and another poll showing 100 majority to the Conservatives. The important thing is targeting our efforts in key constituencies, and by doing that we think we can make considerable gains.
The suggestion was that there might be a Liberal Democrat resurgence, particularly if you took the policy that you would try and offer, as part of your manifesto, a second referendum vote, EU referendum vote on the deal that comes back from Brussels. That doesn't really seem to have happened, does it?
Well, what we're saying is we shouldn't leave the decision, once we know what the details are, to Theresa May, Paul Nuttall and Jeremy Corbyn. We should actually give that decision to the people. And whether people voted to remain or whether they voted to leave, they will have the decision once we know what the details are. And we think that once people get that message, because a lot of people still haven't heard that message, Tim gets that message across today, we think that will have an effect.
And those parts of particularly the southwest where you perhaps hope to make inroads, for instance, in the local elections, that didn't happen either.
Well, the difficulty with the Southwest, as you know, is that it voted predominantly to leave, and therefore the initial impact of that message isn't working. It hasn't worked in the Southwest. But when people realise that we're not saying that you can't decide at the end of the day, the people can't decide at the end of the day.
Brian Paddick, thanks very much indeed. Sian Berry of the Greens is here as well. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Sian. First of all, having this kind of national exposure, crucial for a party that some would say is a lot smaller than the other.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Caroline Lucas is really proving herself to be one of the most popular, one of the most credible politicians. She's an incredibly hard-working MP, and I think the evidence that we'll see tonight from her will again prove to people that we need more Green MPs in Parliament. And for people in areas where that's within reach, I think a lot of people will be deciding to vote Green tonight.
What about the idea of a progressive alliance? Is that actually taking root in any parts of the country, in any constituencies?
I mean, obviously it hasn't taken root amongst the party leaders that we've reached out to, but I think there is a grassroots movement for people
but why do you think that is?
A bit smarter, to look at where they can make their vote make a difference, and to focus their campaigning efforts on areas where there are marginals, where we could change the result on the day. And I think we've been very influential in pushing the idea of working together more cooperatively, and I hope that will carry on after the election too, in opposition or in whatever happens.
But why do you think it hasn't really taken off the way that you hoped it would?
Well, I think on the grassroots it really has.
Really?
I mean, if you look at the number of people who are signed up, who are looking at the various tactical voting websites, and the idea that politics needs to get a bit more grown up, that it shouldn't be about the quite sort of childish arguments that we saw a lot of the time in the Brexit debate. I think people want to get into the details of this now, discuss policy in a very much mature way, have parties working together where they can. That's an idea that I think has got legs. It's going to carry on for many years to come. This is just the start.
All right, Sian, thanks very much indeed. Let's turn to UKIP now. Paul Oakden, it's good to see you.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. You're starting from a very low base. In fact, no MPs whatsoever now. What does Mr. Nuttall have to do tonight?
Well, what he's been doing, which is talking about the issues that are facing the majority of people in this country. We may not have any MPs, but in a way, this whole election, which has been framed by Theresa May around Brexit, is as a result of the victory that UKIP won last year in the referendum. So we go into it with great enthusiasm, great optimism. UKIP have demonstrated more than any other party. We've challenged the political establishment and changed the political direction of this country without members of Parliament. We're going to keep talking about the issues that we think resonate with voters across this country, and we're very much looking forward to doing that, as we've been doing over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what happened with the Stoke by-election. Mr. Nuttall didn't perform as well as perhaps the party had hoped. Why do you think that message isn't getting across?
Well, actually, I think that Paul did perform well in Stoke. I think the problem with Stoke was the expectations were set incredibly low by the Labour Party, which is something they're becoming incredibly good at. I hear that they're already talking tonight about a Jeremy Corbyn victory just by virtue of the fact that he's turning up, which is extraordinary. So we performed as well as we were expecting to perform. It was a disappointment not to win, but we still increased on our vote share from where we were in 2015, which is something to take some excitement over. We're going to keep doing that in seats across the country during this election, and I'm sure that we'll come out with some very interesting results.
OK. Paul, thanks very much indeed. Now, Plaid Cymru. It's good to see you. Thanks for being with us, Stefan. First of all, this is an important stage for you because you can begin to get your message out to a national audience, prime time.
Absolutely, and I think it's worth remembering that the only reason you're asking me about Wales tonight is because Plaid Cymru is here, and it's a matter for the people of Wales to decide whether they want Wales to remain on the UK political agenda after this campaign is over with. And the only way we're going to do that is if Wales does something different, and only by electing a strong team of Plaid Cymru MPs are we going to ensure that Wales is going to be on the UK agenda long after the votes are counted next week. And Leanne Wood made a huge impression in the last UK TV debates. I think her authenticity, her sincerity shine through, and I think that's something that people are really yearning for in Wales and indeed across the UK.
Stephen, what do you think the perception is going to be of Theresa May not turning up?
Well, I think it's quite cynical, actually, for the two main party leaders to use this debate tonight for their own means in certain ways. Theresa May, she's the one who called this election, and yet she doesn't want to be held accountable for her policies and for her programme by not turning up. And Jeremy Corbyn changed his mind at the last minute as some sort of a cynical political ploy to make political capital. What I think people want is for politicians to be up front, to turn up and to allow themselves to be scrutinised on the platforms that they're standing on. And Leanne Wood is here standing up for the people of Wales and Welsh interests.
Okay. Stephen, thanks very much indeed, and in fact to all of you, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Okay, let's get some punditry from our resident journalists here in the spin room. We have Sam Coates and George Egan. It's good to see you both. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. First of all, Sam, just tell me, what are you expecting tonight?
Well, Jeremy Corbyn's decision to come is the sort of the big surprise. So I think a lot will ride on his performance. The dynamics of tonight's debate are going to be slightly odd because perhaps the front runner in this election, Theresa May, isn't going to be there. So there are going to be 5 candidates on the left, 2 candidates on the right, and a lot of the debate will be taken up by criticising Theresa May's decision not to follow Jeremy Corbyn and turn up tonight. The question is, does that make a difference? I'm not so sure it does, and really whether or not Jeremy Corbyn can shine against his opponents, those on the left and those on the right, and whether he can continue to perform well in the media. One of the features of this election has been the way that lots of the smaller parties have seen their vote really disappear and all go to the Labour Party if they were left-leaning parties, or to the Conservative parties if you were UKIP. There is therefore a danger for Jeremy Corbyn that by appearing alongside them and giving them a platform, he may sort of not perform as well or see some of those votes backwards. So the risk is big for him. It's not all win-win. And the Conservatives will try and present this as a sort of coalition of chaos that would need to propel Jeremy Corbyn into Downing Street. So.
Okay, thank you, Sam. George, what about the smaller parties? How important is it for them to address tonight? We've got more or less coming up to a week to go before the polling.
It's very important for them because what we've seen in recent polls is a reversion to the dominance of the two parties. There was talk of the end of the two-party system. In fact, at times you've had Labour and Conservatives vote share above 80%. So the Lib Dems, who have had a bad campaign, need to break through tonight, and you can expect to see them try to tie Jeremy Corbyn to the Tories and UKIP by saying he backs Brexit, he's not promising a second referendum. The Greens similarly take an anti-Brexit stance, and then UKIP, you can expect to see them hammer Jeremy Corbyn on immigration. Although Labour have said they will go along with the end of free movement as part of Brexit, they have not said how much they'd like to reduce immigration by, or particularly how they'd achieve that goal.
Okay, George Eaton and Sam Coates, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Right, okay, so I should tell you that we are going to have live graphics shown on the BBC News Channel's coverage of the debate tonight, and we'll also have our reality check team, and they will be checking all the information, all the facts, all the figures that are given by the panellists tonight live, so that will be an added dimension to the BBC News Channel's coverage. It all starts in about 45 seconds or so up at the Senate House, which is just up the road from us here. But this, of course, is the spin room, and as I say, all the debate, all the analysis and all the reaction we will bring to you after the debate at around about 9 o'clock. So coming up, the most important, perhaps some would say, and certainly the largest debate, election debate in this campaign, with just under 7 days, 8 days to go before polling day on June the 8th. Here now is the BBC election debate live with Michelle Hussain.